Welcome. I'm Leslie Canham.
I'm Mary Gavoni.
I'm Linda Harvey.
I'm Olivia Wan, and together we are the Compliance Divas.
Welcome to the Compliance Divas podcast. This is Linda Harvey, and I will be your moderator for today's episode. We're going to focus on today why the P in HIPAA matters. And I'm particularly excited about today's topic because it's something that I think it's not well understood in dentistry. And there's nobody any better to help us dive deeper into the portability aspect related to HIPAA than Dr. Bryan Laskin. Dr. Laskin refers to himself as an impact junkie. His career path has been guided by simple yet profound truth that powerful change comes from leveraging cutting-edge solutions to overcome challenges in today's healthcare system. And I think we all recognize there's a lot of struggles in our healthcare system, and that includes dentistry. So as a former practice owner and now leading change agent, welcome Dr. Bryan Laskin.
Thank you so much for having me. I just love all the work you're doing, and as you know, compliance is near and dear to my heart. I think it's really important, and all of you are leading the way. So appreciate what you do.
Well, thank you, and we appreciate all that you've done too. So let's ask Mary to jumpstart today on our conversation. Mary has a good question.
Happy to do it. Bryan, again, welcome. Thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us today. Tell us your story. How did you transition from clinical dentistry to becoming a tax expert and the change agent that you've become?
Yeah, I've had kind of a windy career. I started off with an 800 square foot practice and coming out of dental school, and really year over year for 20 years had no less than 25% year over year growth in the practices. Ended up selling to a group where I was chief innovation officer for a few years. And along the way, I've always been interested in technology. I bought my first CAD CAM system about 2 years into practice, about 23 years ago. And at the time it was very new. And basically I thought that the education was very poor that they had. And so I started a study club so we could all learn from each other. And it turned out that me and one other dentist were the only ones that wanted to talk. So that's how I got started. And then started working for companies, and it's kind of ballooned. Then about a decade ago, was really frustrated with the lack of communication that was available within a dental practice, and complained to a friend of mine, and we started a little company that ballooned into a product called Opera DDS that we was in over 30,000 dental practices when I sold it a few years ago. But along the way, kind of went from solving problems within my practices, leveraging technology, to now when we scaled the last platform that I had, I noticed what I thought were systemic problems in the industry, really the biggest problem. And I didn't see anybody else stepping up to solve the problem. And luckily I was kind of in a position at that point to be able to solve that problem. And so I kind of felt like an obligation almost to work on it. And that's what I've been doing for the last few years, which is so I've gone from being a sort of a dentist to sort of solving my own problems with technology to really, because I've been in the room and looking at sort of other aspects that other dentists don't, I still view myself as a dentist. And as a dentist, my job is to help elevate the oral health of the people that I touch. And what I've found is that I've been able to expand that reach through technology and through different forms of advocacy, which is kind of what I'm continuing today.
That's marvelous, Bryan. Yeah, isn't it, Mary? I'm sorry, go right ahead.
What I found through the course of my career are the absolute technophobes and frustration with them. I've always been a techie, and now it is so encouraging to see this proliferation. But of course, we want the right technology that does what we really need it to do. But kudos to you for being an early adopter and an early innovator, because many of the clients that we all work with are still somewhat resistant, but they're never the early adopters. They wait until they're either in a kind of a situation where, well, I guess I have to do this because I'm going to sell my practice, or something happens. And I think there's so many efficiencies we can gain and better patient communication, as you said, by utilizing the technology that's available to us.
Yeah, I wasn't always this way, by the way. When I had my 800 square foot practice, we had a paper schedule, that you with the big pages and a pencil, so that's how we rescheduled people. And putting my schedule on the computer was so scary. Like I was so scared. And of course, then you do it and you're like, holy, why was I scared? Right. And so, I would say 25 years ago, there wasn't a technology that you weren't better off implementing. That's not true today. Like there is stuff where you could be too far ahead today. But 25 years ago, there was literally not a technology in dentistry. Maybe clinical technologies with air abrasions or something, but like a business systems technology that wouldn't make your life better in every way. Whereas that's not necessarily true today. So I think you're like being selective of what technologies you incorporate today, because there's so many, as you alluded to. And so, in fact, I have a whole course where I talk about technology and the order of which you should implement them. Because let's face it, some technologies just are easier to implement, have a lower and have massive ROI. And there's other ones that are going to be like, it's nice and shiny and cool. However, takes a lot of time, energy, and money, and training to launch those products. So yeah, it's changed a lot over the last, I've been in dentistry for 25 years, actually 26 years now, and it's changed a lot. But I didn't start off as an early adopter. I was like, I remember the feeling when we went from the paper calendar to the computer and thinking, well, we should probably still keep the paper calendar around just in case, right?
And the backup number. So, Bryan, I think we should add a link to your course if we can in today's show notes. I think that would be great. The course on the technology and how to adapt it. So that way, anybody who's new to dentistry or thinking about what they want to add next, they can have some wisdom and insights from what you've done. So our diva
Sure,
Olivia
sounds
Wong.
great.
Oh, good. So our diva Olivia Wong could not join us today, but she wanted me to ask you about 3 key buzzwords that I think are really part of your core and your mantra, and that is the education, innovation, and standardization, or your passion. So can you talk to our listeners about how all that matters and how it drives what you do?
Yeah, I think innovation is really, another way of saying creating something new and that's, that creates a positive change. And so that's kind of been that's part of my wiring. I always look for, incremental ways to make things better. And then sometimes fundamental ways to make things better. And the issue with innovation, as we were kind of talking about a little bit here, oftentimes it's not the actual idea or the product, is how do we incorporate it into our practices, into our lives? And that's where education comes into play, because there's a lot of marketing, so there's a lot of noise that is pushed at you, but how do you actually make the right decisions for you? And I think that comes through an educational process. And then when it comes to standardization, I've been involved in standards for about 5-6 years, but that's how we actually create the guidelines for how we actually put, I think of it as like the bumpers on a, if you're a kid in a bowling alley, right? And I think frankly that in dentistry, there hasn't been enough of them, particularly around technology and also advocating for patients. And so that's where I've become very passionate. In fact, I created a whole standard development organization before co-chairing the ADA's work group on interoperability or data exchange. I created a whole standard development organization called Dental Standards Institute because I felt like there were gaps in how many standards there were around, particularly emerging technologies and advocating for patients. So I think they're all related. The 3 kind of go together.
And I would definitely agree. And I agree with you on the fact that I think we adopt things before we really know what we're adopting. The marketing is really good on the front end, and it sounds like it's going to do a lot of things for us. Then we get in there, it's like, oh wait, this didn't actually fit like it was supposed to fit, and this is not what we expected it to be. And that's not done on purpose. It's just that the practice is not ready. There's not enough education on both sides the product and the company, as well as the dental team and the doctor. So I think we have a long ways to go with that to kind of elevate all of our literacy, if you will, our technology literacy and AI literacy, instead of just running to the next big shiny object and the next big shiny platform, if you will. So good thoughts. Thank you. Leslie, I know you had a question for Dr. Laskin as well.
Yeah, Linda, I wanted to ask Dr. Laskin, you're doing some great work in the area of connected dentistry. Can you enlighten us more about the movement that you started?
Well, thanks. Yeah, I view connected dentistry as what I call dentistry 3.0. If you look at dentistry 1.0 as sort of modern dentistry with four-handed dentistry and composites and the things we still do use today, because we're all practicing high-speed hand pieces. Then when I got out of dental school right around the year 2000, we were transitioning to what everybody's still talking a lot about today, digital dentistry. But we've been riding that wave for 25 years. 25 years ago, there was the inventions that are coming on board, like practice management systems. CAD/CAM was around, and now we talk about digital technologies, like the way AI is being used to like read an X-ray. I would call that a digital technology. However, I think everybody in dentistry can kind of feel that we're in a new era. There's a massive amount of change. Just like back around the year 2000, there was a big change with when it comes to transitioning into dentistry to digital dentistry. Well, we're switching now. I call it connected dentistry. Connecting of practices through DSOs, with consolidation, connecting more directly with our patients, which is what we're doing a lot with our product care, to do mobily connecting with patients, and connecting with our medical colleagues and connecting our systems. So we have right now we have siloed technology that don't communicate to each other. That's a big thing that we're doing too with interoperability and tooth apps. And so I think that we're transitioning from a siloed, solo, isolated digital world to a interconnected world. And I think that's going to really, for the next 20 years or so, those are the technologies that I think are really going to completely transform care for the better.
It's amazing what patients can expect for their care and the expediency of being able to get from, well, for example, having a crown milled and having that seated on the same day. It's a big step, a big difference, and I'm excited for this.
Yeah. And I would argue that we were doing that every day in my practice 18 years ago, right? And efficiently. So that is and I know that that's a new to a lot of people, but so what I'm talking about when I'm talking about connected dentistry, I'm talking about what's coming, not what's already here, right? And yeah, I think that that's, it's the connected dentistry world is actually easier and going to be as impactful. Because if we look at our patient, the patient today has changed, right? They're not the same patient as 25 years ago. It's cliche for a reason that everybody talks about mobile devices and social media. This is all interconnectedness. And so I think that the new patient that we're dealing with today is looking for three things: convenience, convenience, and convenience, right? And Leslie, what you mentioned, milling your crown off in your office in one day, that definitely, strikes a chord with convenience. But there's so many other things that we're going to be transitioning over the next 20 years, I think rapidly, actually over the next few years, where we're going to be flipping how we practice dentistry more and more to be in alignment with the way that patients view our profession, not just dictating care to patients, but actually incorporating them as partners into our care.
So very true, right? And we'll come back to some of those points because I think that's going to be what drags us through the market to make us change and to move away from the siloed programs that we have. But I think Mary has a question for you.
I do. And I'm so excited that that's where you're envisioning the future of dentistry, because we see that in the medical model at this point, that the patients are involved through their patient portal. And I talk to a lot of my clients about that, and they're just like, ooh, there's another subscription and there's this and there's that. But still, I look at the efficiencies of it. I walked into my own dental practice for a recare appointment, and I saw no less than 10, it's a very large practice, no less than 10 people sitting with a clipboard and filling out forms. And like, oh my goodness, those forms could have been completed before that patient got there. And engaging the patients in their treatment records. I could go to my portal for my practice and I could see my perio chart, and I could see the recommendations, because I probably don't remember what I was told about my oral hygiene care and all of those kinds of things. That there's just such huge potential, in my opinion, for how we really engage the patients even more. And they are engaged with technology. There's no doubt about that.
Well, and Mary, I mean, let's unpack what you just said, which is beautiful, right? We've fallen behind medicine. That's where we are when it comes to our patients' experiences. Like, when in history has dentistry been behind medicine? I mean, I think that's shockingly, scarily stupid as an industry, right? If we're looking at the benchmark for the experiences we want our patients to be, what's going on in the medical world, I think we have to quickly get ahead of that. I mean, everybody knows that medicine lags behind what people expect to like experiencing when they're walking around planet Earth. Like they don't think of, nobody thinks, boy, the model for efficiency and innovation is healthcare. Nobody's thinking that, but we have fallen behind our medical colleagues when it comes to our patients' experiences. I think, but the good news is that we can leapfrog them very quickly, because and lead the way once again. Because I think dentistry did used to lead the way. I think we've fallen behind, to your point, and I think it's time for us to lead the way again.
And Bryan, that's so perfect, because it also brings us to the title of today's podcast, the P in HIPAA. So if you could say a couple words about portability, because we've been talking about that throughout everything when you talk about, connected dentistry and not having silo technology. But can you just throw on a few comments, if you mind, about what P in HIPAA, the portability actually means? So all of our listeners who have their annual HIPAA training, who maybe haven't really been engaged with that aspect of HIPAA, can be enlightened a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. When I ask people what they think the P stands for in HIPAA, I'd say over 50% of the time people think privacy. Because when we talk about, HIPAA in dentistry, we talk about the privacy rule and the security rule, which are aspects of HIPAA. But the whole point of HIPAA is to have health information, portability, and accountability, which is what HIPAA stands for. And what that means is that the patient actually has access to and has that information to go with them wherever they go. As Mary referenced, like through my chart is the most common place in medicine. And that's kind of what we're bringing to dentistry with our product care. And by the way, so this is part of HIPAA that's required. And actually last week, the White House and the HHS just announced how they were going to be cracking down on what's called information blocking, which means that, if a system doesn't allow you as a dentist or your patients to get access to their information, there's a fine of up to $1 million per incident, and they're going to be cracking down on that hard. And so, not that this is like, HIPAA, information blocking, these are regulatory things that I know most dentists like just wave their hands in the air and say, oh my gosh, it's another regulation. But as you all have referenced before, this is going to make everything we do easier, because when you get that new patient and you take an x-ray of their tooth and the tooth looks fine, the root canal looks great on an x-ray, but there's a radiolucency there. What do you do with it? The answer is nobody has a clue. Today, the answer should be, I look back in the history, because I have the access to the history of what's gone on with that tooth, because you can't know in a snapshot what's going on. And that's happening every day in the average dental practice, where major misdiagnosis is going on because we don't have access to the patient's information. And that's what the P in HIPAA is supposed to do, is honor the patient and your right to have access to that information so that we can make the clinical decisions that we need to so that we can create the best care. And I mean, that's what it comes down to. Because if you're going to drive revenue in your practice, that comes from doing treatment. That treatment is 100% based on the treatment plan you put together, the diagnosis that you get, which is completely the way you come to a diagnosis is by having the information. And that's what the P in HIPAA is meant to protect, is make that information portable so that you can have that information when you're making clinical decisions.
Oh boy, I couldn't agree with you more. And that was so beautiful because I think dentists today are just primarily set on what information do I have today? And so they're starting today from scratch because this is a new patient. But that just, but they don't haven't even begun to think about what it would be to have the historical information. And I that's one of the things that I really stress in all my trainings now, some of these premises that you've been talking about, because we need to be ready. Patients are going to be asking us, I want you to send my dental records to care, to my app on my phone and be able to have it readily available. So, Bryan, I know that all the good work you've been doing has also led you to become an author. And you just mentioned your 2 books that you have out, and as well as your coming book. And we'll put a link in the show notes so folks can pre-order one if they like.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So I've got them here. So the first book is the Patient First Manifesto, which is, when I wrote it, I didn't think anybody was going to read it, frankly, but it's been a huge success. The Patient First Manifesto is kind of what we were talking about before, is how do patients view dentistry and why that's different than the way we in dentistry do. So I think that there's fundamental reasons why we in dentistry have difficulty seeing dentistry through our patient's eyes. And so it kind of describes that, and then how to change your practice to be in alignment, like what we were talking about, convenience, right? Why that's so much more important to patients than to us, and what to do about it. My second book, Dental Disorder, was all about the problem of interoperability and how big it is. Not having that P in HIPAA, like what that actually means to you as a dental practice, the scope of that problem in the industry, because it's way larger than people that haven't thought about it. And so I thought about it for about 200 pages for you. And then my next book, which is coming up in a month, it's called Unfair Care. And this was based on a personal experience of mine. My wife going through some health challenges where we actually hit on some problems in the medical system based on the lack of a data access and some other issues. And so I was inspired to write a book on how to get the best care possible as a patient. In the world, the tagline is get the healthcare you deserve in a system designed to fail you. So healthcare, people say that healthcare is broken, and I argue that it's not broken. It's working exactly as it's designed to. It's just not designed to keep people well, to get people healthy. It's designed to, treat disease and make profits. And so in the book, I describe how to actually get the best care in the system of the way it is now without having to wait for change. How do you actually use technology, use tools, and use, how do you actually get the best care you can?
Bryan, thank you for sharing. We'll make sure we have a link in our show notes today for folks to not only check out your newsletter and the course that we talked about and some of your podcasts on your movement, connected dentistry, and everything, because you truly are and have been such a leader and change agent. So I think we need to be really taking in the great information that you've been sharing and begin to see how we can all become change agents and open our eyes to where we need to go. And I think as more dental professionals do so, the whole trend will move, and I think we'll leapfrog at medicine, as you just mentioned. So
thank you. And I just want to make the note too that I think oftentimes we think of as change as hard, because it is.
Mhm.
But when I look at, when we're talking about connected dentistry, we don't really think about downloading an application on our iPhone or on our Android as a change or progress, or because it's easy to do. And I think that that's one of the things that I think we need to work on, and sort of we as the providers of innovation technology to dentists, this should not be hard. This should be as easy as downloading a new application and using it, right?
Exactly.
I think the concern that I have is that people view this as too much of a challenge, right? And so I think you know, we change does not need to be hard. It can be as simple as, you know, the last time you downloaded an application on your phone.
Mhm, mhm. Absolutely. Leslie has a final comment before we wrap up. This is so fascinating, and we could speak all day.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for announcing your new book. I can't wait to read it because I think we do need to advocate for ourselves and we do need to be proactive. And I just wanted to comment on the P for portability and convenience. And I remember the days where you had to go and get your large film x-ray from one provider and hand carry this big film to another provider, and how easy it is today to be able to have that information all integrated into a software where they can simply look up the information. And uh, people today are not thinking of some of the things that they well, like for example, many people think they just had their full mouth x-rays last year. Well, it's really been 5 or 6 years. But if you didn't have that information at your fingertips through portability, then you miss a lot. The same thing with the other health issues or vaccinations or other types of things that you have maybe forgotten about, but are now available on this portability and being accessible to all providers on whatever location you go to get your health care.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Yeah, there's so many friction points in our workflows that are alleviated when we actually have this sort of interconnected workflow, right? Which is why, you know, the number one question when people get for example, a software today, they say, does it integrate with my practice management system? Because that integration makes everything just smoother. And all we're doing is expanding that so that everything works together, you know, in the same way. So you don't even have to ask the question, right? You shouldn't have to ask, does this integrate with my software? Because the information is all portable. So everything just works.
Absolutely. This has been such an informational episode, Dr. Laskin, and I can't wait for it to air in a couple of weeks because it'll come out right before the launch of your new book, and so folks can pre-order the book and be ready and really become change agents themselves this year. And I think we should challenge them to really look at that. So thank you so much for joining us for the Compliance Divas podcast. We really appreciate your time and expertise today.
Thank you very much. And just again, not only to you as the compliance divas and leading the way, but your listeners, like just showing up, listening to a compliance podcast. You are so far ahead of others in the industry. And so I think that, you know, just appreciate everything that you guys are doing.
Well, thank you so much. As the Compliance Divas, we bring clarity and simplicity to compliance, and we invite you to listen to this podcast when it airs. And we also invite you to check out the show notes and to take advantage of the resources that we'll provide from Dr. Laskin. And as you do, don't forget to scroll down to the bottom and leave us a note or review. We look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.